Hello there, everyone. Welcome to Cryptic Corpse. I am your storyteller, and I'm here to guide you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to drift off to sleep, so before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'm always curious, where are you watching from, and what time is it in your part of the world? Now find your cozy spot and relax. I shouldn't have come here. That's what I keep telling myself as I write this, my fingers shaking so badly I can barely hold the pen. The wind outside howls like a dying animal, and the temperature gauge reads 60 degrees. But that's not why I'm shaking. I found something in the ice today, something that proves my father didn't just disappear 25 years ago. He's still here, frozen in time, waiting. But let me start from the beginning. My name is Dr. Marcus Winters, and 3 months ago I arrived at this research station in the middle of nowhere, Alaska. When I say nowhere, I mean it. The closest. Town is 200 miles away, and during winter, which is pretty much always here, you can't even see the sun. It's just darkness, ice, and wind. I came here to study climate patterns, at least that's what I told everyone. But really, I came looking for answers about my father. He vanished here in 1932 during an expedition, and I've spent my whole life wondering what happened to him. The military trained me for cold weather operations, but nothing could have prepared me for what I found. The research station isn't much to look at, just a bunch of metal buildings sitting on stilts to keep them above the snow. My new partner, Dr. Sarah Ivanov, met me at the door when I arrived. She's in her late 30s with dark hair always tied back in a neat bun and eyes that seem to know more than she lets on. "Welcome to the end of the world," she said with a half smile. "Hope you brought enough books to keep you sane." I liked her right away, but there was something odd about the way she watched me unpack my equipment, like she was waiting for something specific. The first few weeks were normal enough. We took ice core samples, recorded temperatures, and tried not to go crazy from the endless darkness. Sarah taught me how to use the special drill that pulls up columns of ice from deep below the surface. Each layer of ice is like a page in Earth's diary, telling us what the weather was like hundreds or even thousands of years ago. But everything changed last Tuesday. I was working alone in the lab, examining an ice core we'd pulled up from about 300 feet down. The ice at that depth was old, really old. As I was rotating the cylinder under the light, something dark caught my eye. At first, I thought it was just trapped dirt or rocks, but when I looked closer, my heart nearly stopped. It was a journal, a small leather-bound book, perfectly preserved in the ice. And on its frozen cover, I could make out 3 faded letters. R.W. Robert Winters. My father's initials. My hands were trembling as I carefully melted the ice around it. Sarah walked in just as I was opening it. "Marcus, what are you—" She stopped mid-sentence when she saw what I was holding. The color drained from her face. "Where did you find that?" I told her about the ice core, but she barely seemed to hear me. She was staring at the journal like it was a bomb about to go off. That's when things started getting weird, really weird. The local Inuit people, who had always been friendly and helpful with our research, suddenly refused to come near the station. The old man who usually brought us supplies took one look at the journal and backed away, shaking his head. "This place holds old spirits," he told me, "the cold ones. They sleep in the ice waiting. Your father, he woke them up." I wanted to dismiss it as superstition, but that night I read the first entry in my father's journal. The pages were perfectly preserved, his handwriting as clear as if it had been written yesterday. What I read made my blood run cold. March 15, 1932, something is wrong with this place. The temperature drops far below what should be possible. We recorded 80 degrees today. The instruments must be broken, but Thompson swears they're working fine. The ice here, it's different. When we drill, it seems to move. Yesterday, we found what looks like an ancient burial ground beneath the permafrost. The local guides abandoned. Us this morning, they say we've disturbed something that should have stayed sleeping. I'm starting to think they might be right. I was still reading when the first blizzard hit. The wind screamed against the walls of the station, and the lights flickered ominously. Sarah burst into my room, her face pale. "We need to talk," she said. "There's something I haven't told you about this place, about why I'm really here." She sat down and took a deep breath. "The government sent me. There's been a special interest in this region, particularly in how living things adapt to extreme cold. But it's not just about science anymore. We found things in the ice, things that shouldn't be possible." As if to emphasize her point, the lights went out completely, plunging us into darkness. In the distance, something that sounded almost like laughter echoed across the ice. Sarah grabbed my arm. "Your father's journal. We need to read all of it, now, before it's too late." "Too late for what?" I asked. The wind howled louder, and in the beam of our flashlight, I swear I saw frost crystals forming on the walls in impossible patterns, like frozen fractals growing before our eyes. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "Too late to stop what's already waking up." And that's when I first noticed it, the strange gap in time. The clock on the wall said only 10 minutes had passed since the lights went out, but the sun had already risen and set again. Something that should have taken 24 hours in this part of Alaska. Something was very wrong with time itself at our little research station. And according to Sarah's face, this was just the beginning. The next morning, Sarah and I sat in the kitchen, my father's journal between us on the table. Neither of us had slept much. The weird thing about time skipping during the night had left us both jumpy and confused. "Tell me everything you know," I said, pouring us both coffee. My hands were steady now, but my insides felt like ice. "Why did the government really send you here?" Sarah wrapped her hands around her mug like she was trying to soak up every bit of warmth. 5 years ago, another research team disappeared up here. They were studying why this particular spot gets so much colder than anywhere else in Alaska. The only thing they found was... She paused, biting her lip. "Well, maybe I should show you." We bundled up in our winter gear and headed out to a storage building I'd never been in before. The whole time, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us from the endless darkness. The snow crunched under our boots, and our breath came out in thick white clouds that seemed to hang in the air longer than they should. Inside the storage building, Sarah pulled out an old metal container. Her hands shook a little as she opened it. "These were in the ice, perfectly preserved," she said softly. I looked inside and felt my stomach drop. Photos, dozens of them. They showed people I'd never seen before, all wearing old-style winter gear. But something was wrong with their faces. Their skin looked almost see-through, like glass, with weird patterns underneath that reminded me of frost on a window. "When was this taken?" I asked, though I was afraid I already knew. "The dates on the back say 1932. Sarah's voice was quiet. "These are from your father's expedition." My hands started shaking again. "But that's impossible. They looked like they were taken yesterday." "That's not even the weirdest part," Sarah said. She pointed to one photo in particular. "Look at the background." I squinted at it. Behind the strange glass-faced people was our research station. The exact same buildings, the exact same layout. But our station wasn't built until 1950, 18 years after these photos were supposedly taken. "I don't understand," I said, but my voice came out all wrong, like I was talking through water. That's when the first real blizzard hit. Not just wind and snow, but something else. Something angry. We barely made it back to the main building. The storm came out of nowhere, turning the world into a wall of white. But in the swirling snow, I saw something that made my heart stop. A figure, standing perfectly still about 50 feet away. It looked like a person, but too tall, too thin. And through the snow, I could have sworn its skin was clear as ice. Inside, we rushed to check the thermometer. The digital display read 80 degrees, exactly like in my father's journal. Sarah ran to check the backup thermometers, but they all showed the same impossible temperature. "This is how it started last time," she whispered. "With the temperature drops." I pulled out my father's journal again, flipping through the pages with shaking fingers. There was an entry from just before his team disappeared. March 20th, 1932. The cold is alive. It sounds crazy, but we can all feel it now. It's not just temperature. It's something conscious, something hungry. Thompson's skin started going strange today. We can see right through it in places, like it's turning to ice. He says he can feel it spreading through his veins, but he's still walking and talking. How is that possible? The others are showing. Signs, too. I think I am as well. When I look in the mirror, I barely recognize myself. A loud crack made us both jump. The window was freezing over, but not in normal frost patterns. The ice was forming perfect geometric shapes, like someone was drawing them with a ruler. As we watched, they began to spiral and grow, creating patterns that hurt my eyes to look at. "Sarah," I said slowly, "what happened to the last research team? The one from 5 years ago really happened to them?" She wouldn't meet my eyes. "We found them 3 months later. They were changed. Their bodies were perfectly preserved like the people in those photos, but their skin was clear as ice, and their organs—" She stopped, shuddering. Their organs were still moving, still working, even though they were frozen solid. The lights flickered, and in that moment, I saw our reflections in the window. For just a second, maybe less, I could have sworn I saw right through my own face. That night, the dream started. I was running through endless corridors of ice, but they kept changing. Sometimes I was in the current research station, sometimes in what looked like an ancient ice cave, and sometimes I was in a place that couldn't exist, where the walls were made of frozen time itself. I saw my father in these dreams. He was always just around the next corner, his footprints in the snow, filling up with ice crystals that formed impossible patterns. When I finally caught up to him, he turned to face me, and his skin was clear as glass, his organs still moving beneath the ice that had become his flesh. "The cold wants in, son," he said in my dream. "It's been waiting so long. And now you're here too." I woke up gasping, my breath freezing in the air in front of me. The room was dark, but something was different. Wrong. I fumbled for my flashlight and nearly screamed when I turned it on. The walls were covered in the same geometric ice patterns from the window, but they were moving, growing like living things. And in the beam of my flashlight, I saw my breath wasn't just freezing. It was freezing in perfect symmetrical patterns before shattering like glass. I ran to Sarah's room, pounding on her door. She opened it immediately, like she'd been waiting. "For me, it's happening, isn't it?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What happened to my father, to his team, to the researchers 5 years ago? It's happening to us now." Sarah nodded slowly. "The cold doesn't just want in, Marcus. It wants to change us, make us like it, and I don't think we can stop it." As if to prove her point, the lights went out again. In the darkness, I felt something cold touch the back of my neck. Not like normal cold. This felt alive, aware, and somewhere in the distance I heard ice cracking in a rhythm that sounded almost like words. It started with my fingers. Such a small thing at first. Just a tingle in my fingertips, like when your hand falls asleep. I noticed it the morning after the strange ice patterns appeared on the walls. I was trying to write in my journal, documenting everything that had happened, when I realized I could see the pen through my thumb. Just a tiny spot, no bigger than a freckle, but clear as window glass. I could see straight through to the bones. Underneath, I ran to Sarah's lab, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. She was already there, bent over a microscope, studying something with such focus, she didn't hear me come in. "Sarah," I said, my voice cracking, "something's happening to me." She looked up and I saw she'd been crying. Without a word, She held up her own hand. The same clear spot was spreading across her palm, like a drop of water freezing into ice. "I took some blood samples," she said quietly. "Want to see something scary?" I didn't, not really, but I looked through the microscope anyway. What I saw made my stomach turn. My blood cells were changing, crystallizing into perfect snowflake patterns, but somehow still moving, still carrying oxygen. "How is this possible?" I whispered. "We should be dead." "That's just it," Sarah said. "The cold, it's not killing us, it's changing us, making us like itself." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "Like your father." I pulled out his journal again, flipping to the last few entries. His handwriting got messier toward the end, like his hands were shaking too badly to write properly. March 25th, 1932. "The change is speeding up. We can all see through our skin now, watch our own hearts beating. The strange thing is, we're not dying. The cold has gotten inside us, but instead of killing us, it's turning us into something else. Thompson says he can feel the ice in his thoughts now, says he can hear it thinking." The next entry was dated just one day later, March 26th, 1932. "The cold speaks to us now, shows us things, the truth about this place, about what lies beneath the ice. There was a civilization here once, but not human. They were creatures of living ice, and they've been waiting for so long. We're not the first they've changed, won't be the last." I looked up from the journal to find Sarah staring at her hands. The clear patches had spread, covering most of her fingers now. Through her transparent skin, we could see her bones, her tendons moving as she flexed her fingers. "It doesn't even hurt," she said wonderingly. "It feels right somehow. Like this is how we were always meant to be." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that we had to fight it, but I felt it too. The cold had gotten into my blood, into my thoughts, and it felt like coming home. Over the next few days, the changes got faster. It spread up our arms, across our chests, turning our skin to living ice. We could see our hearts beating, watch our lungs expand and contract. The weird thing was, we felt stronger, not weaker. The terrible cold outside didn't bother us anymore. But the dreams got worse. Every night I found myself walking through frozen corridors that shouldn't exist, following my father's voice. He was trying to tell me something important, something about what really happened in 1932, but I always woke up before I could understand. One morning, I woke to find Sarah standing in my doorway. The transformation had reached her face. Her skin was completely clear now, like she was carved from the purest ice. I could see every muscle move when she spoke. "Marcus," she said, her voice different now, like wind through ice caves. "There's something else I need to show you." She led me to a part of the station I'd never seen before, a hidden room beneath the main building. Inside were filing cabinets, dozens of them, all marked classified. "The government didn't send me here to study the cold," she admitted, pulling out a thick file. "They sent me to study the transformations. They've known about this place for decades, about what it does to people." I opened the file. Inside were photos, reports, documents dating back to the 1800s, all about people who had changed, become like us. Some were natives who had lived here for generations, some were explorers who got lost in the ice, and some were scientists like my father who came looking for answers and found something else instead. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, but I already knew the answer. I could feel it in my changing blood. "Because once it starts, it can't be stopped," she said. "The cold, it's ancient, intelligent. It's been waiting for the right people, the right bloodlines. Your father was special, Marcus, and so are you." That's when I noticed something odd about my vision. I wasn't just seeing what was in front of me anymore. I could see everything. The ice miles below us, the ancient ruins buried in the permafrost, and time itself, layers of it, like the layers in an ice core. I saw my father's expedition as if it was happening right now. Saw the moment the cold first touched him, saw his skin turn to ice, saw him walk into the depths of a glacier and become something more than human. He's still alive, isn't he? I asked Sarah. Still out there in the ice somewhere? She nodded. They all are. Everything the cold takes, it keeps, changes, preserves. She touched my face with her crystalline fingers, just like it's keeping us. That night, as I write this, I can see straight through my hands to the paper below. My heart beats in patterns of frost, and my thoughts are turning sharp and clear as ice. Outside, the wind carries voices, my father's among them, calling me to join them in the ancient caves below. Sarah says we have maybe a day left before the transformation is complete. Before we become whatever it is my father and his team became. Part of me is terrified, but another part understands now. The cold isn't our enemy. It's what we were always meant to become. I can feel time shifting around us, reality bending like light through ice. The station itself is changing. Too, its walls growing crystal patterns that pulse like frozen heartbeats. And deep below, in caves older than humanity, something is stirring, reaching out, calling us home. Tomorrow we'll go down into the ice. We'll find my father, find the others, learn the truth about what we're becoming. But first, I needed to write this down, to leave a record for whoever comes after us, because they will come. The cold is patient. It's been waiting for thousands of years, slowly choosing its people, carefully building its family of ice and frost and frozen time, and now at last I understand why my father never came home. He wasn't lost, he was transformed. Time stopped making sense that night. I don't mean that in a poetic way. It literally stopped working right. I'd walk down a hallway and find myself back in my room, or I'd enter the kitchen and see myself already, there drinking coffee, but the other me would look right through me like I wasn't there. Sarah said it was happening to her too. We'd be talking, and suddenly she'd disappear, then reappear minutes later saying we'd just had an entire conversation I didn't remember. The cold isn't just changing our bodies, she explained, while we watched ice crystals dance across the ceiling. It's changing how we exist in time itself. The research station was different now too. Hallways that used to be straight now, curved in ways that hurt my eyes to look at. Doors would open to rooms that couldn't possibly fit inside the building. Once, I opened my bedroom door and found an ancient ice cave on the other side, with walls that glowed with a soft blue light. I saw my father today, I told Sarah over breakfast, though it's hard to say if it was really breakfast when time keeps jumping around. I mean, I really saw him, not just in a dream. I had walked into the lab and there he was, looking exactly like he did in the old photos from 1932. His skin was completely clear now, like the purest ice, and I could see his frozen heart beating in patterns of frost. He'd turned to look at me, and his eyes, they weren't human anymore. They were like looking into ancient glaciers, full of frozen memories and time itself. "Son," he'd said, his voice like crackling ice. "You're almost ready." Then he'd faded away like mist, leaving only frost patterns. On the floor where he'd stood, Sarah wasn't surprised. "The barriers are breaking down," she said, "between past and present, between what was and what is. Soon, all times will be one time." She pulled out an old book from her desk, not my father's journal, but something much older. The cover was made of what looked like frozen leather, and the pages were thin sheets of ice with strange symbols carved into them. "The local Inuit. Elders gave this to me when I first came here," she said. "It's about the ancient ones, the beings of living ice who used to rule this place. They had rituals, ways of connecting different times together, making them into one moment that lasts forever." As she spoke, I noticed something strange happening to the walls. They were becoming transparent like our skin, but what showed through wasn't pipes or insulation. It was ice, ancient, deep ice, with things frozen inside it. I saw shadows of creatures that looked almost human but weren't, their bodies made of geometric ice patterns that moved and flowed like liquid crystal. "They're waiting for us," Sarah whispered. "All of them. Your father, the other researchers, everyone the cold has ever changed. They're all down there in the deep ice, becoming part of something bigger." That's when we heard the cracking sound. Not like ice breaking, but like reality itself splitting open. The floor beneath our feet became clear as glass, and through it we could see layer after layer of frozen time. Scenes playing out from different years, different decades, all happening at once. I saw my father's expedition setting up their camp in 1932. I saw the research team from 5 years ago taking their samples. I saw ancient people performing rituals on the ice. And I saw things that looked like they came from a time before humans existed. Creatures of living ice moving through frozen caves. The weird thing was, they could all see each other now. The barriers between times were getting thinner, weaker. I watched my father look up and wave to me through layers of frozen years. Sarah grabbed my arm. Her touch was cold now, but not in a bad way. It felt like belonging. "We need to do the ritual," she said. "The one from the book. It's the only way to complete what's happening, to join them properly. What will happen to us?" I asked, though I think I already knew. "We'll become part of it, part of the ice, part of time itself. Like your father, like all the others." She paused, her crystal clear face serious. "But we have to choose it, Marcus. The cold doesn't take. It only accepts those who want to join." As if responding to her words, the station groaned around us. The walls were completely transparent now, and through them I could see other versions of our research station. Past, present, and what looked like future, all layered together like sheets of ice. In each version, I saw myself and Sarah at different stages of the change. Some of us were still mostly human, some were like we were now, and some were something else entirely, beautiful and strange and not human at all. The cold was speaking to us now, not in words exactly, but in patterns of frost and ice that somehow made sense to my changing mind. It showed us what we could become, what everyone who had ever been changed had become, part of an ancient family of ice and time and endless winter. I looked at Sarah, at my own reflection in the frozen walls, at the layers of time all around us. "How do we do the ritual?" I asked. She opened the ancient book, its pages glowing with a soft blue light. "First we need to draw the ice patterns, then..." But she never finished that sentence, because that's when all the times crashed together at once. Past, present, and future collided like massive sheets of ice, and the real transformation began. Everything happened at once. The walls of the station shattered like glass, but we didn't feel the cold anymore. Around us, time itself broke open. I saw my father's expedition, the team from 5 years ago, and dozens of others I didn't recognize. All of them changed, like us. Their bodies clear as ice, their frozen hearts beating in perfect rhythm, and in the middle of it all stood my father. He looked just like I remembered from when I was a kid, but made of living ice now. Inside his clear chest, his heart beat in beautiful frost patterns. His eyes were deep and blue, like looking into ancient glaciers. "Marcus," he said, and his voice was somehow both the cracking of ice and the warm voice I remembered from childhood. "You finally made it." I wanted to run to him, to hug him like I dreamed of doing for 25 years. But Sarah grabbed my arm. "Wait," she said. "Look." The ground beneath us had become completely clear, revealing something massive frozen deep below. At first I thought it was just more ice, but then I saw it move. It was a city. An ancient city, made entirely of living ice, with buildings that looked like frozen crystals growing up from the ground. And moving through its streets were the original ice beings, creatures of pure frost and cold, their bodies flowing and changing like liquid crystal. This is what we found in 1932, my father said, walking closer. What we were meant to find. The cold ones. They'd been waiting for the right people, people who could understand, who could become like them. You're their first child, Sarah whispered, and I realized she was talking to my father. The first human they chose to change. He nodded. They showed me such wonderful things. Time doesn't work the same for them. Past, present, future. It's all one moment, frozen forever like insects in amber. And now, he held out his hand. To me, now it's your turn, son. The massive storm that had been building finally broke, but it wasn't snow and wind that fell from the sky. It was time itself, falling like shards of broken glass. Each piece showed a different moment. My father's expedition, my own arrival at the station, Sarah's secret studies, and countless other times, all happening at once. The ancient ice beings rose up from their city below, their bodies twisting and flowing like living glaciers. They moved through the frozen moments like they were walking through water, gathering all the times together. The ritual, Sarah said suddenly. We have to complete it now while all the times are connected. She pulled out the old ice book, its pages glowing brighter than ever. The symbols on it weren't just carved marks anymore. They moved and flowed, telling stories in a language of frost and cold. My father joined us as Sarah began to read. The words weren't in any human language, but somehow I understood them. They spoke of ice and time and change, of becoming something more than human. As she read, the ice beings began to dance around us. With each movement, they pulled the broken pieces of time closer together. I saw myself as a child, dreaming of finding my father. I saw myself arriving at the station. I saw myself in the future, my body made of living ice, moving through frozen time like it was nothing but air. It's not just about turning to ice, my father explained as the dance continued. It's about becoming part of something bigger, something ancient and beautiful. The storm of broken time spun faster, and I felt the last changes beginning. The ice wasn't just in my body now, it was in my thoughts, my memories, my very being. I could feel every moment I had ever lived, all happening at once. I saw the truth then. The cold ones hadn't taken my father away. They had given him a gift, made him part of their endless family of ice and time, and now they were offering the same gift to me and Sarah. Are you ready? Sarah asked, her voice like wind through ice. Caves. I looked at my father, at the ancient city below, at the dance of frozen time all around us. For 25 years, I'd thought my father was lost, but he hadn't been lost at all. He'd been waiting for me to be ready, to understand, to join him in this endless moment of ice and wonder. I took his hand. It was cold, but it felt like coming home. Yes, I said. I'm ready. The ritual reached its peak. The ice beings' dance pulled all the times together into one eternal moment. The research station transformed, its walls becoming pure crystal that reached down to join the ancient city below. And we changed with it, becoming truly part of the ice, part of time itself. I write this now from that eternal moment. My heart beats in patterns of frost, and time flows around me like water. My father is here, and Sarah, and all the others who were chosen by the cold. We are the children of ice and time, living in our crystal city beneath the endless Arctic. Night. Sometimes new people come to our frozen world, drawn by the same mysteries that called us. We watch them through layers of time, waiting to see if they're ready to join our family. After all, the cold is patient. It has forever to wait, and now so do we. The morning I found Sarah's diving camera washed up on the beach, I knew the ocean was trying to tell me something. It had been exactly 1 year since my daughter disappeared beneath these waves, but the camera looked like it had been underwater for only a day. The screen still worked, which should have been impossible. I'm Michael Pearson, and I've spent my whole life pulling treasures from the sea. Shipwrecks, ancient coins, lost cargo, you name it, I've probably found it. But nothing prepared me. For what I discovered on this foggy island off the Maine coast, the camera was just the beginning. I'd moved here 3 months ago to study the weird tides around the island. Something wasn't right about them. They came in when they shouldn't, went out when they couldn't. Sometimes the water would rise and fall like it was breathing. I'd seen a lot of strange things in my years of deep-sea salvage, but nothing like this. I took the camera back to my rental cottage, my hands shaking as I checked the memory card. The last photos were dated from the day Sarah vanished, April 15th, 1987. She had been testing out her new underwater camera, excited about following in my footsteps. The first few pictures were normal. Fish, coral, her giving a thumbs up to the lens. Then the images started getting weird. In the last photo, taken just minutes before she disappeared, there was something in the background. Through the murky water, I could make out what looked like buildings, huge structures made of coral and stone that shouldn't exist at that depth. I'd dived those waters 100 times since her death and never seen anything like it. That's when I heard the knock at my door. The woman standing there introduced herself as Dr. Eleanor Wright. She was tall and pale, with strange silvery eyes that seemed to catch the light wrong. "Mr. Pearson," she said, "I need to talk to you about the tides." I almost shut the door in her face. I wasn't in the mood for company, especially not today. But then she said something that made my blood run cold. "I know what happened to your daughter. The same thing is happening to me." She pulled back her wet hair to show me something behind her ears. At first, I thought they were cuts or scars. Then I saw them move. They were gills, small but definitely real, flexing slightly as she breathed. "The changes started 2 weeks ago," Eleanor told me as I let her in. "I'm a marine biologist. I came here to study mutations in the local fish population. But I think I'm becoming part of my own research now." She explained how her skin had started becoming translucent in patches, how she could stay underwater longer and longer without needing to breathe, how she'd been having dreams of an ancient city deep beneath the waves, calling to her. I showed her Sarah's camera and the strange photos. Eleanor's hands trembled as she looked at them. "The ruins," she whispered. "They're real. I've seen them in my dreams." That night, I had my first prophetic dream. I saw Sarah swimming through dark waters, but she wasn't scared. She was transforming, just like Eleanor, her skin taking on a silvery sheen, her eyes growing large and black. She was swimming toward a massive structure made of living coral that pulsed with its own light. She turned to look at me, and her smile was both beautiful and terrifying. "Come find me, Dad," she said, but her lips didn't move. The words echoed in my head. "We're all changing. Soon you'll understand." I woke up gasping, my sheets soaked with sweat that smelled like seawater. The fog had crept under my door somehow, and in the distance I could hear the tide coming in at completely the wrong time. Eleanor and I spent the next few days planning our first dive to search for the ruins. She got worse each day. The gills, behind her ears growing larger, her skin becoming more translucent. Sometimes, when she moved in certain lights, I could see her heart beating through her chest. "It doesn't hurt," she assured me, catching me staring. "It feels right, like this is what I was always meant to become." My grandmother used to tell stories about our family curse, about how the sea would claim us one day. I never believed her until now. The local fishermen started avoiding us. They knew something was wrong with the island, with the tides, with Eleanor. Old Jimmy Porter, who'd lived here 60 years, told me the fog bank that surrounded the island had been growing, thicker each day. "Time ain't right in that fog," he warned me. "Tommy went out there fishing last week. Swears he was only gone an hour, but he came back 3 days later. Didn't age a day, mind you, just lost time, like the sea swallowed it up." I knew we had to hurry. Whatever was happening to Eleanor was accelerating. Whatever had taken Sarah was reaching out again. The ocean was calling us down to its secrets, and this time I was ready to answer. Looking back now, I wish I'd run as far from this island as I could. But when you've lost a child, there's no distance far enough to escape that pain. And when the sea offers you a chance to understand why, you take it, even if that understanding comes at a terrible price. Tomorrow we dive for the ruins. Eleanor's eyes are almost completely black now, and last night I noticed my own skin starting to shimmer in the moonlight. The tide is coming in again, but the moon is wrong, and the fog is so thick I can't see the water from my window. I can hear it, though, whispering secrets in a language I'm starting to understand. Sarah is down there, in that impossible city beneath the waves, and soon, very soon, I'll know why she smiled as she swam away from everything human. The real question is, will I be human enough myself to come back and tell anyone what I find? The water was colder than it should have been when Eleanor and I made our first dive. Even through my thick wetsuit, I could feel something wrong about the temperature. It wasn't the normal cold of the Atlantic. This was deeper, older, somehow. Eleanor swam ahead of me, her movements already changing. She moved through the water like she'd been born to it, her new gills fluttering behind her ears. I followed the beam of her flashlight down into the darkness, checking my depth gauge every few minutes. The numbers didn't make sense. We should have hit bottom at 60 feet, but we were passing 100, and the water was still clear. Clearer than it should have been at this depth. That's when my watch stopped working. Not just the digital display. The second hand on my backup diving watch froze mid-tick. Eleanor pointed to hers, showing the same thing. Time was doing something strange down here. I felt it in my body too. The dive should have lasted only 40 minutes with our air supply, but it felt like hours. We went deeper and deeper, but our tanks stayed full. I started seeing things in the darkness beyond our lights. Shapes that shouldn't be there, movements that weren't fish. Then we found the first wall. It rose up from the darkness like it had been waiting for us. The surface wasn't stone or coral. It was both and neither. It looked alive with patterns that shifted when you stared at them too long. Eleanor touched it, and I swear I saw light spread from her fingers through the wall, like ripples in a pond. My head started hurting, but not like normal pressure headaches from diving. Images flashed through my mind. Sarah swimming through these same waters, her hands touching the same wall, her body already starting to change. I saw her following the light deeper, deeper, into places humans weren't meant to go. Eleanor tugged my arm and pointed. There was an opening in the wall now, a doorway that hadn't been there seconds ago. Through it, we could see lights, real lights, glowing with a soft blue-green that reminded me of bioluminescent plankton. We shouldn't have gone through. Every instinct I had from years of diving screamed at me to turn back, but Sarah had gone this way. I could feel it. The passage led us to a huge open space, a plaza or courtyard. Buildings rose up around us, built in ways that ignored everything I knew about architecture. Shapes that shouldn't be able to exist underwater stood firm against the currents. Arches curved in impossible directions. Stairways spiraled both up and down at the same time. My flashlight beam caught something moving in one of the buildings. A face looked out at us. Not human, not fish, but something in between. It vanished before I could get a better look, but I knew we'd been seen. Eleanor was changing faster now. Her skin had become almost completely see-through. I could see her. Bones shifting beneath the surface, adapting to the pressure. She wrote on her dive slate, "I can breathe the water now. It feels right." That's when I noticed my own hands. In the beam of the flashlight, my skin had started to shimmer with a silvery sheen. The same change that had taken Sarah, that was transforming Eleanor. It was happening to me, too. We found a chamber filled with what looked like scientific equipment, but made of coral and living tissue. Charts and diagrams covered the walls, showing human bodies in various stages of transformation. Some of the drawings matched exactly what was happening to Eleanor. Others showed the final stages, forms that were beautiful and horrifying. Eleanor studied them with an almost hungry look in her now black eyes. She wrote, This isn't a curse, it's evolution. They've been guiding us. Who has? I wrote back. She pointed to a mural on the far wall. It showed figures emerging from the sea thousands of years ago, walking on land, building cities. Then it showed them returning to the water, changing back into something else. The final image showed a massive shape rising from the depths, something that made my eyes hurt to look at. A sound echoed through the water then, a deep wail-like song that I felt in my bones. Eleanor's eyes went wide. She wrote quickly, "They're waking up. We need to go, now." We swam back faster than we should have been able to. The walls themselves seemed to push us along, like the city was helping us escape. When we finally surfaced, the sun was setting. We'd been down for 6 hours, but our tank still read half full. That night, the dreams got worse. I saw Sarah again, but this time she was different, more changed. She showed me what the city would become, what we would all become. I woke up tasting salt water, even though I hadn't been near the sea. Eleanor came to my door at dawn. The gills behind her ears were fully formed now, and her fingers had started to web. "Michael," she said, her voice sounding strange and bubbly, "I found something in those diagrams, something about your daughter." She showed me her notes, written in shaky handwriting. Sarah wasn't taken. She was chosen. She was the first of this generation. And now they're choosing all of us. The fog bank around the island had grown so thick we couldn't see the mainland anymore. The tides were coming in and out every few hours now, ignoring the moon completely. And in the harbor, the fishermen's boats were finding strange things in their nets. Fish that looked almost human, and humans that looked almost like fish. Something was rising from that ancient city, something that had been waiting a very long time. And we were all becoming part of its plan, whether we wanted to or not. I looked at my reflection in the window. My eyes had started to change color, turning a deep, oceanic blue. Eleanor put her webbed hand on my shoulder, leaving a damp print on my shirt. "We have to go back down," she said. "Tonight, the tide will be wrong again. That's when the city is closest to the surface. We need to find Sarah before—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. We both knew that time was running out. Not just for finding Sarah, but for remaining. Human enough to remember why we were looking for her in the first place. That night, the sea didn't just call to us. It sang. The sound carried through the whole island, a deep humming that made windows rattle and dogs howl. Everyone heard it, but Eleanor and I were the only ones who understood what it meant. The city was rising. We didn't need diving gear anymore. Eleanor's gills were fully formed, and my own had started growing the day before. Looking at her now, I barely recognized my friend. Her eyes were huge and black, her skin transparent enough to see her heart beating. When she smiled, her teeth were sharp. "Can you feel it, Michael?" she asked as we walked into the water. "The change is speeding up. We're running out of time." The cold didn't bother me anymore. My new skin, silvery and slightly scaled, kept me warm. We swam down faster than any human could, following the song. The underwater city seemed closer to the surface now, its impossible buildings reaching up through the darkness like hungry fingers. This time, the city welcomed us. Doorways opened as we approached. Lights flickered to life, casting blue-green shadows that danced on the walls. And we weren't alone anymore. They moved through the water around us, dozens of transformed people in different stages of change. Some looked almost human still, like Eleanor and me. Others looked more like what we were becoming. A woman with fins instead of arms smiled at us as she swam past. A man whose lower body had become like an eel's gestured for us to follow. Then I saw her. Sarah floated in a chamber made of living coral, surrounded by softly pulsing lights. She was beautiful and terrible, fully transformed into something that belonged in this deep city. Her skin glowed with its own light, her hair floating around her head like silver seaweed. When she opened her eyes, They were the color of the deepest ocean. "Dad," she said, but not with words. I heard her voice in my head like in my dreams. "You finally came." I tried to speak, found I could. "Sarah, what happened to you?" She smiled, showing teeth made for deep water hunting. "They chose me, Dad. They've been choosing people for thousands of years. Special people. People who belong to the sea." "Who are they?" Eleanor asked, her voice strange and bubbly through her gills. Sarah swam to a wall covered in carvings. They showed the same story we'd seen before, but now I could read the symbols. They told of ancient beings who came from the stars, landing in the deepest parts of the ocean. They built cities and waited, slowly changing humans over countless generations. "They're not just changing us," Sarah explained. "They're waking us up, making us remember what we used to be before our ancestors crawled onto land. But it's more than that. They're preparing us." "For what?" I asked, but part of me already knew. A shadow passed over us, something massive moving through the water high above the city. The building trembled. "For their return," Sarah said. "The Great Ones are waking up, and they'll need us to help them reshape the world, to bring everyone back to the sea." Eleanor's face lit up with understanding. "The breeding program," she said. "The family curses, the bloodlines. They've been guiding our evolution for centuries." Sarah nodded. "Some bloodlines were chosen long ago, like Eleanor's family. Their curse wasn't a curse, it was a gift, a marker in their DNA." She turned to me. "And some, like us, Dad, are chosen when they're ready." I looked at my hands, the webbing growing between my fingers. All those people I saw swimming through the city. "The islanders," Sarah finished. "They're all changing too. The song is calling them. Soon the whole island will be empty of humans." And then the shadow passed over us again, closer this time. Through the transparent walls of the city, I caught a glimpse of something that made my transformed eyes widen. A shape bigger than any whale, with features that belonged in the deepest nightmare trenches of the ocean. "We don't have much time," Sarah said. "The tide is wrong again. That means they're nearly ready to surface. You have to make a choice, Dad. Both of you do." "What choice?" Eleanor asked, but her tone said she already knew. "You can fight the change," Sarah said. "Try to stay human, maybe even warn the mainland, though they won't believe you until it's too late. Or—" She gestured to her own transformed body, perfect for the deep ocean. "You can embrace it, become what you were always meant to be." The huge shape moved again, and this time I felt its consciousness brush against my mind. Ancient thoughts, older than humanity, filled with promises of power and knowledge. The weight of oceans, the secrets of the deep. Eleanor's webbed hand found mine in the water. Her black eyes were full of wonder and fear. "Michael," she whispered, "I don't think we can stop this." "We don't have to," Sarah said. "This was always going to happen. The only question is, will you help lead the way, or try to fight the tide?" The city shuddered again. In the distance I could hear more singing, the islanders answering the call of the depths. Through the coral walls I saw lights approaching from the surface. More people, swimming down to their transformation. I looked at my daughter, this beautiful and terrible sea creature she'd become. I thought of all the months I'd spent searching for answers about her disappearance. Now I had them, but they weren't anything I could have imagined. The choice Sarah offered wasn't just about us anymore. It was about the future of humanity, about what we would all become when the Great Ones rose from their sleep. I opened my mouth to answer, tasting the salt, water that felt more and more like home. Above us, the shadow moved again, patient but eager, waiting for our decision. I made my choice in that moment, watching my transformed daughter float before me in the ancient underwater city. But before I could speak, the water around us changed. The massive shape above the city moved closer, and this time I saw it clearly. It was like a mountain made of flesh, with features that didn't make sense to my still partly human mind. Eyes bigger than houses opened along its sides. The song it sang shook the coral buildings. "They're rising now," Sarah said in my mind. "We can't wait any longer." Eleanor's grip on my hand tightened. Her black eyes were fixed on the creature above us. "Michael," she said, "look at the surface." I turned my gaze upward, toward where the normal world should be. The fog bank that had surrounded the island was gone. In its place, the ocean itself was changing. The water was becoming thicker, more like the deep sea water around the city. And through it I could see boats. The mainland finally noticed something was wrong, Sarah explained. "They're coming to investigate why no one on the island is answering their calls." She was right. Coast Guard cutters and fishing boats were gathering above us. Their spotlights pierced the strange water, searching for answers. They had no idea. They were floating right above an impossible city, or that something ancient and massive was rising beneath them. "We have to warn them," I said, but even as I spoke, I knew it was too late. The transformation was spreading through the water itself now. I watched in horror and wonder as the first drops of changed water touched the boats above. People on deck suddenly grabbed their throats, their skin beginning to shimmer. Some dove into the water immediately, their bodies already knowing what they needed to do. "It's not just the island anymore," Sarah said softly. "The great ones are changing all. The waters, every ocean, every sea. Humanity had its time on land. Now it's time to come home." Eleanor let go of my hand. Her transformation was almost complete now. She looked more like Sarah, beautiful and inhuman. "We can help them," she said. "Guide them through the change like Sarah helped us understand. Make it easier." The choice became clear then: fight against the tide and watch helplessly as humanity transformed, or help lead them into their new existence. Guide them, protect them. I looked at my daughter again, remembering how I'd searched for her, how I'd blamed myself for her disappearance. Now I understood. She hadn't been taken. She'd been chosen to help humanity take its next step. "The change can be beautiful," Sarah said, reading my thoughts. "It doesn't have to be frightening." Above us, more boats were arriving. Military vessels now, their sonar pinging uselessly against the ancient buildings below. The great creature's song grew louder, and I felt others like it, stirring in the deep trenches around the world. The tide that would reshape humanity was rising, and nothing could stop it. I made my choice. "Show me how to help them," I said to Sarah. "Show me how to make the change easier for them." She smiled, her illuminated skin glowing brighter. Eleanor moved to join her, and together they led me to the center of the city. Other transformed humans gathered around us, teachers, guides, ready to help those who would soon join us in the depths. The next few hours were both wonderful and terrible. We swam up to the struggling boats, helping those who were changing, guiding them down to the safety of the deep city. Some fought against it, but their bodies knew the truth. We had all come from the sea once. Now we were just going home. Thus, a great creature above us began to rise toward the surface, and others like it around the world did the same. The old gods of the deep were waking up, calling all humanity back to the waters that had birthed us. I write this account now, in the new language we've learned, recorded on walls of living coral for those who might one day find our city. My transformation is nearly complete. Soon, I won't remember what it was like to walk on dry land, to breathe air instead of water. But I'll remember why we chose this path. The sun is strange and distant above us now, but we don't need its light anymore. We make our own, our bodies glowing like stars in the deep. Sarah leads the teachers, helping the newly transformed adapt to their ocean home. Eleanor studies the changes, understanding the science of what we've become. And me? I guide others. Through their fear, showing them the beauty that waits on the other side of change. The ocean holds no terrors for us now. We are its children again, evolved to survive in the deepest waters. Sometimes on quiet days, I swim to what's left of the island. Most of it is underwater now, the buildings slowly claiming their place among the coral. The fog is gone, but something else keeps the curious away, a shimmer in the water that turns boats around, protecting our secret until the final tide comes for everyone. They say that humanity's greatest fear is the unknown that lurks in deep water. But I know different now. The greatest fear is fighting against what you're meant to become. The tide is rising, the great ones are waking, and we will be ready to welcome everyone home to the sea. I still remember the sound, that horrible grinding noise, like teeth scraping against rock, coming from deep within the mine shaft. It wasn't supposed to be there. Mines are supposed to be quiet when the drills aren't running. But this mine was different. And I knew it from the moment I first stepped into that elevator, clutching my brother Tom's old tape recorder in my sweaty hands. My name is Dr. Nathan Reynolds, and I'm a mining geologist. That means I study rocks and how to get valuable minerals out of the ground safely, but nothing in my 20 years of experience could have prepared me for what I found in the Copper Canyon mine in Arizona. It started 3 weeks ago when the mining company called me about some unusual formations they'd found. They also mentioned something else. They discovered some of my brother's old equipment. Tom had disappeared in this same mine 2 years ago during a cave-in. They never found his body. I almost said no. Ever since Tom vanished, I can't stand being in tight spaces. Sometimes even riding in an elevator makes my heart race. But I had to know what happened to him. I had to know the truth. The mine entrance looked normal enough. Just a big hole in the mountainside with some old wooden buildings around it. But as soon as I walked into the main office, I knew something was off. The workers looked nervous, and they kept glancing at the mine entrance like they expected something to come crawling out. That's where I met Dr. Maria Vasquez. She said she was from the government studying the local minerals, but I caught her staring at my brother's tape recorder, and there was something in her eyes. Fear, maybe. She knew more than she was telling. Dr. Reynolds, she said, putting on a tight smile. I've read your work on mineral formations, but I don't think anything you've studied will help us understand what's happening 3,000 feet below us. Was about to ask her what she meant when one of the miners burst into the office. His face was white as chalk, and his hands were shaking so bad he could barely hold his hard hat. Level 5, he gasped. You need to see this. The walls, they're not right. Maria's face went even more serious. She pulled something from her pocket, looked like an old piece of carved stone with strange symbols on it, and gripped it tight. Dr. Reynolds, she said, before we go down there, you need to know something. This isn't just about your brother anymore. Those formations we found, they're moving, and they're not like anything we've seen before. I laughed nervously. Rocks. Don't move. That's basic geology. But then I clicked play on Tom's recorder, and my brother's voice filled the room. He sounded terrified. Day 47 below level 10. The samples, they're changing. I can see patterns forming in the stone, like veins in living tissue. And the walls, oh God, the walls are breathing. If anyone finds this, stay away from the lower levels. The tribal elders were right. This place, it's alive. The recording ended with a scream and that same grinding sound I'd hear later. The sound that still haunts my dreams. Maria touched my shoulder. Your brother found something down there, Dr. Reynolds. Something the local tribes have been warning people about for centuries. We found their carvings on the walls, stories about a hunger in the stone, about a place where the rock itself feeds on the living. I wanted to run. Every cell in my body was screaming at me to get out of there. But I thought about Tom, alone in the dark, when, whatever it was happened, I couldn't leave without knowing. How deep are we going? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. All the way, Maria replied, checking her equipment. 20 levels down. But I should warn you, the deeper we go, the stranger things get. time itself doesn't seem to work. Right down there. As we walked toward the elevator, I noticed more tribal warnings carved into the walls near the entrance. One showed people being pulled into the rock itself, becoming part of the stone. I told myself it was just superstition, just old stories meant to scare people away from sacred ground. I was wrong. So terribly wrong. The elevator creaked as we stepped inside. Maria pressed the button for level 5, where the first signs of the unusual formations had been reported. As we began our descent, I closed my eyes and took deep breaths, fighting back the claustrophobia. That's when I felt it. A subtle vibration in the elevator cables, different from the normal shake and rattle. It felt like something was pulling us down. Not the gravity I'd studied all my life, but something else, something hungry. I opened my eyes and looked at Maria. She was gripping her tribal artifact so hard her knuckles had turned white. She felt it too. "Dr. Reynolds," she whispered, "whatever we find down there, promise me you won't touch the walls. Don't let the stone touch your skin, not even for a second." The elevator kept descending into the darkness, and with each foot we dropped, that grinding sound got louder. We were going to find out what happened to Tom, all right. But by the time we did, I'd wish we'd never set foot in this place. Because in the Copper Canyon mine, the stone beneath isn't just rock, it's awake and it's hungry. The elevator stopped at level 5 with a quiet ding that seemed too normal for what we were about to face. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, showing a tunnel that looked like any other mine shaft I'd seen at first. "Watch your step," Maria warned, as we walked deeper into the tunnel. "The ground isn't always solid down here." She wasn't kidding. The floor felt different, not like regular rock, more like walking on something that gave slightly under each step, like old wood. But this was solid stone, or at least it was supposed to be. I pulled out my sample kit and knelt down to check the tunnel wall. The rock had a strange pattern I'd never seen before, like tiny veins running through it. When I shone my flashlight directly on it, the veins seemed to shift away from the light. "Here," I said, pointing. "This isn't normal mineral formation. These patterns, they're growing like blood vessels." Maria nodded grimly. "We found the first samples like this 2 weeks ago. By the next day, the pattern had spread another 10 feet down the tunnel. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Rocks don't grow like that. These do." She pulled out a small chunk of stone from her bag. "Look closely. Under my flashlight, I could see the sample was warm to the touch. Tiny lines pulsed across its surface like a heart beating very, very slowly. I dropped it in shock, and the sound it made when it hit the ground wasn't the sharp crack of stone. It was a wet thud. That's when we heard the scream. It came from deeper in the tunnel, a worker's voice yelling something about the walls moving. We ran toward the sound, our flashlight beams bouncing off the walls. The veins in the stone seemed to follow our light, reaching out like fingers. We found Mike, one of the senior miners, pressed against the tunnel wall, his face white with fear. It grabbed me," he stammered. "The wall. It's not right. Look." He shone his light on the spot where he'd been standing. The rock surface had a perfect impression of his back, like a mold in wet clay. But this was solid stone. I clicked on Tom's recorder again, scanning through his entries. His voice crackled through the speaker. "Day 35. The mineral samples are showing impossible growth rates. When I put them under the microscope, I can see cells dividing, like the stone is growing. The company doesn't want to shut down operations, but they don't understand. This isn't a normal mine anymore." Maria grabbed my arm. "There's more. Show them, Mike." Mike led us down a side tunnel, and that's where we saw it. The walls were covered in ancient carvings, hundreds of them. But these weren't like the warnings at the entrance. These told a story. The carvings showed people digging into the mountain, then figures being pulled into the stone. The last images showed something massive living deep underground, with veins spreading out through the rock like roots. Your brother found these too, Maria said quietly. In his last reports, he mentioned that the tribal elders called this place the mountain that hungers. They said it was a living thing, sleeping in the stone. That every few hundred years it would wake up and feed. I played another of Tom's recordings. Day 40, found government files hidden in the old storage room. They've known about this place for years. Other mines, other disappearances. They're not just here for copper, they're studying it, learning how it spreads. Maria, if you find this, the recording cut off in static. Maria looked away. I should have told him more, warned him. The government's been tracking these formations since the 1940s. They appear in mines, caves, deep tunnels. Always growing, always hungry. A distant rumble shook the tunnel. Dust and small rocks fell from the ceiling, but mixed in with the falling debris was something else. Something that looked like dark, stringy fibers. We need to get to level 10, Maria said. That's where Tom's last signal came from. But first, she pulled out more equipment, plastic suits, gloves, anything to keep the stone from touching our skin. What happened to the other mines? I asked, as we suited up. The other sites the government found? They collapsed them, buried them under tons of concrete. But this one's different, bigger. And it's spreading faster than anything we've seen before. Mike's radio crackled. A voice came through, panicked. Level 8 here! We've got movement in the north tunnel. The walls are... Oh God! Send help! Send... Static. We all looked at each other. Level 8 was 300 feet below us. Whatever was happening down there was getting worse. We should leave, Mike said. Seal it all up. This isn't right. But I couldn't, not without knowing what happened to Tom. Not without understanding what this place really was. I'm going down, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Level 10. That's where the answers are. Maria nodded. I'm coming with you. Mike, get back to the surface. Tell them to prepare for evacuation. If we're not back in 3 hours... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. As we walked back to the elevator, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The impression of Mike's body in the wall. It was gone. The stone was smooth again, like it had never been there, but now the veins in that section of wall were larger, darker, like they'd just been fed. The elevator doors closed and we started our descent to level 10. Neither of us spoke. We could feel the whole mine shifting around us, waking up, and somewhere in the darkness below, in the deepest tunnels of Copper Canyon Mine, something was waiting for us. Something that used to be stone. Something that used to be sleeping. Something that was hungry again. The elevator ride to level 10 felt like it took forever. Every few seconds, the lights would flicker, and in those dark moments I could swear I felt something brushing against the elevator walls. What exactly are we looking for? I asked Maria, trying to keep my voice steady. Your brother's last known location was the North Tunnel, she said, checking her map. He was studying something he called transition zones, places where the stone was changing. The elevator stopped with a shudder. When the doors opened, I almost couldn't believe what I was seeing. The tunnel walls weren't grey anymore. They had a pinkish tint, like skin, and they were warm. I could feel the heat even through my protective suit. Don't touch anything, Maria warned, though she didn't need to tell me twice. The changes are more advanced down here. Our flashlights showed something that made my stomach turn. The veins we'd seen above were much bigger here, some as thick as my arm. They pulsed slowly, moving under the surface of the stone like giant worms. Over there, I pointed. A mining cart sat abandoned in the tunnel. Next to it was a pile of equipment, sample bags, tools, and a familiar-looking notebook, Tom's research journal. As I picked up the notebook, something dripped onto my helmet. I looked up and froze. The ceiling was moving. Those stringy fibers we'd seen earlier, hung down like dark roots, swaying even though there was no wind. Maria, I whispered, what are those things? She aimed her light at them. We think they're how it feeds. They sense movement, heat. They're like like fingers reaching out to grab anything that comes close. I opened Tom's journal with shaking hands. The last entry was hard to read, the writing rushed and messy. They're not separate, all connected, one thing huge. Mining woke it up. Samples show cellular structure, stone turning organic. Miners missing, heard screams from deep tunnel. Walls took them, making them part of it. Have to warn. The rest was just scribbles. Crackling sound made us both jump. One of the walls was changing. The veins were pushing outward, forming shapes. As we watched in horror, something that looked like a hand pressed out from inside the stone, like someone trapped behind a sheet. "Oh God," I gasped. "The missing miners." Maria grabbed my arm. "We need to move, now. The transition is spreading faster than before." We hurried down the tunnel, trying not to look at the shapes forming in the walls. Some were clearly human, others were something else. All of them seemed to be reaching toward us. That's when we found it. Tom's last research station. His equipment was still there, including a microscope and dozens of stone samples in sealed containers. But the samples didn't look like stone anymore. They were more like pieces of flesh, streaked with crystal formations that sparkled under our lights. Maria started packing up the samples. "This is what we came for. Your brother, he figured it out. The mine isn't just a mine, it's becoming something else. And it's using everything it catches to help it change." A deep rumble shook the tunnel. Dust and small rocks rained down, but now I could see they were mixed with those dark fibers. They were spreading, growing right in front of us. "Look," I said, pointing to one of the walls. The veins were forming a pattern, not random anymore, but organized, like a giant nervous system. "It's not just growing, it's building something." Maria nodded grimly. "A body. The whole mine is becoming a body, and we're inside it." Suddenly, our radios crackled to life. It was Mike from the surface. "Get out of there." Level 12 just collapsed, but it's not really collapsed. The tunnels are closing themselves, like a mouth closing. You have maybe an hour before. The radio went dead. We looked at each other, then at the elevator. The doors were still open, but those hanging fibers were growing thicker, reaching toward the opening. "We can't go back that way," Maria said, "but there's another elevator shaft on the south side. If we hurry." A scream cut through the darkness, not from above or below, but from inside the walls. It sounded like Tom's voice, but twisted, wrong, like he was calling from very far away. "This way." Maria pulled me down a side tunnel. "We have to get to level 15. There's something you need to see. Your brother found it just before he disappeared." "What did he find?" "The heart," she said. "The center of it all. Where this thing started, where it's still growing from." As we ran through the tunnels, I noticed the stone was changing faster now. The veins were everywhere, pulsing stronger, faster. The walls didn't even look like stone anymore. They were rippling like muscles under skin, and somewhere in the darkness ahead of us, that grinding sound was getting louder. But now I knew what it really was. It was the sound of stone turning to flesh, the sound of a mountain coming alive, and we were headed straight for its heart. The path to level 15 was like walking through a nightmare. The tunnel walls had changed. So much they looked more like the inside of a throat than a mine. Everything pulsed with a dull red light that seemed to come from the veins themselves. "Something's wrong," Maria said, checking her watch. "We've been walking for 2 hours, but..." I looked at my own watch. It showed only 20 minutes had passed. "The time down here," she explained, "it doesn't work right anymore. Tom wrote about it in his last reports. The deeper you go, the stranger it gets." We turned a corner, and I stopped dead in my tracks. The tunnel ahead looked old. Not just regular mine old, but ancient. The support beams were rotted wood instead of metal, and there were oil lamps hanging on the walls instead of electric lights. "This isn't possible," I whispered. "These tunnels were dug in the 1960s. Maria shone her light on some marking on the wall. 1887, she read. This section of the mine, it's from the first copper rush, but it should be hundreds of feet away from here. That's when we heard the pickaxes. The sound of metal hitting stone echoed through the tunnel, along with voices speaking in what sounded like Old English. Don't! Maria grabbed my arm as I started to walk toward the sounds. They're not real, or maybe they are, but not in our time. The mine, it's folding time somehow, mixing everything together. A shadow moved across the tunnel ahead, a miner in old-fashioned clothes carrying a pickaxe. He walked right through a solid wall like it wasn't there. My head was spinning. How is this happening? The government files I found might explain it, Maria said, pulling out some papers. They're from experiments they did here in the 1940s. They discovered that the deeper parts of the mine exist in multiple times at once, like layers of time stacked on top of each other. I played another of Tom's recordings. Day 45. The time. Shifts are getting worse. Yesterday, I saw myself walking down the tunnel ahead of me. When I followed, I found my own footprints in the dust, still fresh, but I haven't made them yet. The mine isn't just alive, it's breaking all the rules of reality. A loud crack echoed through the tunnel. The walls suddenly shifted like giant muscles flexing. When they settled, the old section of the mine was gone, replaced by something that looked newer than our time. Smooth walls, with strange markings and lights I'd never seen before. We need to keep moving, Maria said urgently. The shifts are getting more frequent. If we get caught in one, she didn't finish, but she didn't have to. I'd seen enough sci-fi movies to know what happens when you get stuck in the wrong time. As we walked, I noticed something weird about our shadows. Sometimes they moved before we did, like they were a few seconds ahead of us. Other times they lagged behind, trying to catch up. We found more government papers scattered on the ground, recent ones. They showed diagrams of the mine, but not like any mining maps I'd seen. These showed it as a living thing, with organs made of stone and crystal, veins running through the rock like a giant circulatory system. They knew, I said, looking at the papers. They knew what was down here all along. Maria nodded. They've been studying it for decades. Different teams, different times, all trying to understand what it is, how it works, the time distortions, the transformations. It's all connected to whatever's at the center. Suddenly, the tunnel filled with a familiar voice, Tom's voice, but not from the recorder. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. Nathan, Nathan, is that you? I can see you, but you're not here yet. Or maybe you were here already. The time, it's all wrong. But I found it. I found the heart. You have to see. Tom, I called out. Tom, where are you? The only answer was that grinding sound, louder than ever. The walls rippled, and suddenly we were in another time period. The tunnels rough cut and lined with strange tribal markings. The natives who first found this place, Maria explained, touching one of the markings. They knew what it was. They tried to warn everyone. These symbols, they're not just warnings. They're instructions. Instructions for what? How to stop it, how to put it back to sleep. But first, we have to find... The tunnel shook violently. When it stopped, we were back in our own time. But something was different. The veins in the walls were pulsing faster, stronger, and they were all pulsing in the same direction, deeper into the mine. It knows we're here, Maria said. It's calling us down, to the heart. A weird light began to shine from deeper in the tunnel, a blue-green glow that made the veins in the walls look like rivers of light. And mixed in with the grinding sound was something else now, a deep, slow heartbeat. Level 20, Maria said. That's where it all started, where the heart is, where Tom... She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Whatever happened to my brother, whatever this place really was, all the answers were waiting for us in the deepest part of the mine. We started walking toward the light. With each step, the heartbeat got louder, the walls pulsed stronger. And somewhere ahead of us, or behind us, or maybe in some other time completely, I could hear Tom's voice calling us down to the heart of the mountain, down to the place where stone comes alive, down to the truth that would change everything if we survived long enough to understand it. The trip down to level 20 was like walking through a dream, or maybe a nightmare. The walls weren't even pretending to be stone anymore. They looked like flesh, raw and alive, with crystals growing through them like bones breaking through skin. "Listen," Maria whispered, holding up her hand. Beyond the grinding sound and the heartbeat, we could hear voices. Dozens of them, maybe. Hundreds, all whispering together. Some I recognized, miners who'd gone missing over the years, and one voice that made my throat tight. "Toms, they're all here," Maria said softly. "Everyone the mine ever took, they're part of it now. Part of whatever's down there." The tunnel opened into a massive cave, bigger than a football field. The ceiling was so high, our flashlights couldn't reach it. But we didn't need them anymore. Everything was lit by that blue-green glow, pulsing like a giant heartbeat. "Oh, my God," I breathed. In the center of the cave was, well, I still don't know exactly what it was. Imagine a heart the size of a house, made of crystal and stone and flesh, all mixed together. Veins thick as tree trunks ran from it into the walls, ceiling and floor. With each beat, that blue-green light pulsed through them like blood. "The heart of the mountain," Maria said. "The thing that's been sleeping here since before humans existed. Mining woke it up, and now it's hungry again." We found Tom's last research station near the heart. His equipment was covered in crystal growths, but his final samples were still there. Under a microscope, we could see what was happening. The stone wasn't just coming alive, it was changing everything it touched, turning it into something new. Something that wasn't quite stone and wasn't quite flesh. "Nathan?" I spun around. That voice, it was Tom's, but it came from... "Oh no," Maria grabbed my arm. "Don't look, please don't look." But I had to. Near the heart, the wall was changing. A face was pushing out of it, Tom's face, but not like it was trapped behind the stone. More like he was part of it now, like he'd been absorbed into it. "Tom?" My voice cracked. His eyes opened. They were made of crystal now, glowing with that same blue-green light. "Nathan, you came. I knew you would. I wanted to warn you, but it's beautiful, Nathan. What we found. What we're becoming. What happened to you?" I asked, even though I was afraid to hear the answer. I became part of it. We all did. The heart. It's not just alive, it's aware, it thinks, and it's so hungry. Maria was reading through Tom's final notes frantically. The tribal instructions, they knew how to put it back to sleep. Some kind of ritual. But we need the stones, Tom's voice said. Other faces were appearing in the walls now, all watching us. The sacred stones, like the one she carries, they can... He seemed to be fighting something. The crystal in his eyes pulsed brighter. "You have to go," he gasped. "It's too late for us, but you... Run! Run!" The whole cave shuddered. The heart began beating faster, the light getting brighter. The veins in the walls started reaching for us like fingers. Maria pulled out her tribal stone. Similar crystals were growing all over the cave walls, but hers was different. It seemed to push back against the blue-green light, glowing with its own warm amber color. "The elders knew," she said. "These stones, they're like antibodies. They can fight the change, push it back to sleep. But we need more. There should be more here somewhere." I spotted them. Crystals just like Maria's, half buried in the cave floor. The mine hadn't been able to change them. As I grabbed them, I felt them warm up in my hands. "Tom," I called out, "tell me how to help you." His face in the wall looked sad. "You can't help us, Nathan. We're part of it now. Forever. But you can. Stop it, put it back to sleep, before it spreads beyond the mine, before it takes everything." Maria started placing the stones in a pattern around the heart, following the tribal markings, each one lit up with that amber light forming a circle. The heart started beating faster. The walls trembled, the voices, all those lost people started screaming. "It's fighting back," Maria shouted. "One more stone! We need one more!" I had the last stone in my hand. The heart was pulsing wildly now, the veins reaching for us like hungry snakes. I ran toward the last spot in the circle. Nathan, Tom's voice was fading. "I'm sorry for everything. Now run as fast as you can." I placed the last stone. The amber light flared up, connecting all the stones in a circle of energy. The heart's blue-green glow flickered, dimmed. "Run." Maria grabbed my hand and we ran for the tunnel. Behind us, the heart was beating slower, slower. The cave started shaking apart, not like a normal cave-in, more like the whole thing was trying to close in on itself. We ran through tunnels that were shrinking, squeezing shut behind us. The voices faded away. The grinding sound got quieter. We barely made it to the elevator. As it carried us up, we could feel the whole mine changing below us, settling back into normal stone, going back to sleep. 3 days later, they sealed the mine, poured enough concrete to build a small city down there. The government wrote it off as a normal cave-in, another mining accident. But sometimes late at night, I take out Tom's old tape recorder and listen. Past all his research notes and warnings, at the very end of the tape, there's something else. Something recorded deep in the mine when the stone was still alive. It sounds like singing. Hundreds of voices all joined together. And somewhere in that strange song, I can hear my brother's voice, peaceful now. Part of something bigger than any of us could understand. The mine is sleeping again. The stones Maria found, made sure of. That. But there are other mines out there, other deep places, and sometimes when I'm falling asleep I can still feel it. That slow, steady heartbeat, pulsing deep beneath the earth, still waiting, still hungry, still calling. The tree had my wife's face. I know how crazy that sounds, but I've been a forest ranger for 20 years and I've never seen anything like it. The bark had twisted itself into familiar features. Sarah's gentle eyes, her soft smile, even the small dimple in her right cheek. It was like the tree was trying to tell me something. That was 3 days ago. Now I'm sitting in my cabin, staring at Sarah's old field journal that I found buried under a mass of roots, its pages stained with something that looks too red to be tree sap. My hands won't stop shaking. Maybe I should start from the beginning. Name is Robert Mitchell. And I used to think I knew these woods. I've walked every trail, marked every dangerous spot, and helped lost hikers find their way back home. But after Sarah disappeared a year ago, the forest changed. Or maybe I'm the one who changed. Either way, nothing makes sense anymore. It started with the growth patterns. Trees don't usually grow overnight, but that's exactly what was happening. I'd mark a tree one evening, and by morning it would be 3 feet taller, its branches twisted in impossible ways. The locals started calling it the Hungry Forest, like it was some kind of joke. They stopped laughing when the first person went missing. I remember the day I first noticed something was really wrong. I was checking the new growth near Eagles Ridge, where Sarah used to do her research. The trees there had always been old, ancient, really. But now they were doing things that defied everything I knew about nature. The roots were moving not over months or years, but right in front of my eyes. They crept across the ground like fingers, reaching for something I couldn't see. That's when I met Anna Two Rivers. I was kneeling down, trying to make sense of a root pattern that looked almost like writing, when I heard her voice behind me. "Tucky, forest remembers," she said. Just like that, as if she was telling me the weather. She was standing there in traditional clothes, but it was her eyes that caught my attention. They were green, not brown like you'd expect, but a deep, living green that reminded me of moss after rain. "What do you mean it remembers?" I asked, Trying not to show how much she'd startled me, she knelt beside me, touching the root with fingers that had what looked like tree sap stains. Your wife knew. That's why she was here so much. The trees, they're not just growing, they're trying to tell us something. My throat went dry. How do you know about my wife? Anna smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. Because the forest showed me, just like it's showing you now. She pointed to a cluster of roots that had broken through the soil. Look closer. I did, and there, tangled in the roots, was Sarah's field journal, the journal I'm holding right now. The pages are filled with her familiar handwriting, but the words don't make sense. She wrote about the trees having a consciousness, about an underground network that was more than just roots. She mentioned ancient tribal grounds where time moved differently, and government research that should have stayed buried. The last entry is dated the day she disappeared. It just says, they're not taking the memories, they're giving them back. I hear something outside my cabin now. It sounds like branches scraping against wood, but there aren't any trees close enough to touch the walls. At least, there weren't. This morning, Anna's coming back tomorrow. She says she needs to show me something in the deep woods, something about old ritual grounds. Says it's connected to what happened to Sarah. I know I should be scared. A normal person would pack up and leave, write this all off as grief or stress or too many lonely nights in the forest. But Sarah's face in that tree, it wasn't just random, patterns in the bark. She was trying to tell me something, and now, looking at these dark stains on the journal's pages, I'm starting to think it wasn't tree sap at all. The scratching at my walls is getting louder. And is it just my imagination? Or are the shadows outside moving even though there's no wind tonight? I have to know the truth, even if the truth has roots, even if it hurts, even if it's hungry. The morning came with fog so thick I could barely see 10 feet ahead. Anna was already waiting at my cabin when I stepped outside, a small leather bag hanging from her shoulder. She didn't say good morning. She just pointed to the tree line and said, "We need to go now, while the forest is quiet." I grabbed Sarah's journal and followed her. The woods felt different in the fog. Every sound seemed closer, every shadow deeper. Our footsteps made no noise on the damp ground, like the earth was swallowing the sound. "My grandmother used to tell me stories," Anna said as we walked, her voice barely above a whisper, "about how our people use these woods for ceremonies. Not just any ceremonies, they would talk to the trees." I would have laughed at that a year ago, but after what I'd seen, after Sarah's face in the bark, I just listened. "They believed the forest was alive?" I asked. "Not just alive." Anna stopped walking and touched a nearby trunk. "They believed. It remembered. Everything that ever happened here, every person who walked these paths. The trees kept it all, like a library keeps books." A cold breeze rustled the leaves above us. I pulled Sarah's journal from my pocket and showed it to Anna. "Is that why my wife's journal talks about memories, about the trees giving them back?" Anna's green eyes widened when she saw the dark stains on the pages. "She found it," she whispered. "She actually found it." "Found what?" Instead of answering, Anna started walking faster, leading me deeper into the woods. The fog was thinner here, but something else was wrong. The trees, they were different. Their bark was darker, almost black, and their branches seemed to reach toward us as we passed. After about an hour, we came to a clearing I'd never seen before, and I thought I knew every inch of these woods. In the center was a circle of stones, each one covered in carvings that looked older than the trees themselves. But what made my stomach turn were the roots. They grew in perfect spirals around the stones, like they were following a pattern, like they were trying to copy the carvings. "This is where they did it," Anna said, "where they talked to the forest." She knelt down and opened her leather bag, pulling out what looked like old photographs. They showed men in suits standing in this same clearing, but the trees behind them were normal then. "This had to be from at least 50 years ago. Government researchers," she explained. "They found out about our ceremonies. thought they could use the forest's memory like some kind of weapon. They built a facility underground, right beneath where we're standing. I remembered something from Sarah's journal about government research. What happened to them? Anna's face got dark. The forest didn't like being used. One day they all disappeared, just like... She didn't finish, but she didn't have to, just like Sarah. That's when I noticed something strange about the ground we were standing on. The roots weren't just growing in spirals, they were pulsing, like a heartbeat, and they were moving toward the center of the stone circle. Anna, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, what exactly did they do in that facility? She was about to answer when we heard it, a sound like wood creaking, but deeper, coming from underground. The roots around us started moving faster. They tried to store memories in the trees, Anna said quickly, backing away from the center. But they got it wrong. The forest doesn't store memories, it trades them. The ground beneath us shifted. A gap opened between two roots, revealing what looked like old metal stairs leading down into darkness. The air that came up smelled like wet earth and something else, something chemical. Your wife found their old research, Anna said. She figured out what they did wrong, and I think... She paused, looking at me with those moss-green eyes. I think she made a trade. My hands were shaking again as I opened Sarah's journal to the last page. The words looked different now, like they were written by someone in a hurry. They're not taking the memories. They're giving them back. The sound from underground got louder. The roots were pulling the metal stairs apart, revealing more of whatever was below. I could see old lights flickering in the darkness, still working after all these years. We need to go down there, I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. Anna nodded, pulling something that looked like old tribal charms from her bag. Yes, she said, but first, you need to understand something. What's down there? It's not just science gone wrong. It's the forest trying to become something new, something that's part tree, part memory, and... She hesitated, and part human. I finished, thinking of Sarah's face in the bark. The roots were still moving, making a path for us into the darkness. As we started down the stairs, I noticed something on the walls. At first, I thought it was mold or some kind of moss, but then I saw it was growing in patterns that looked an awful lot like human fingerprints. The stairs creaked under our feet as we went deeper underground. Our flashlights cast long shadows on walls that seemed to be breathing. The old metal was covered in a layer of something that moved slightly, like moss, but darker. Don't touch the walls, Anna whispered, holding up one of her wooden charms. The forest is hungry here. The air got thicker as we went down. It smelled like wet leaves and old books with something else underneath. Something sharp and chemical. Our flashlight beams showed old filing cabinets pushed against the walls, their drawers burst open by roots that had grown right through the metal. That's when I saw the first one. At first I thought it was just another root, thicker than the others, but as my light moved across it, I realized what I was seeing. It was an arm, or at least it had been an arm. Now it was something else. The skin had turned to bark, with little branches growing from where fingers should be. It was reaching out from the wall like it was frozen in time, trying to grab something that wasn't there anymore. Oh God, I whispered. Are these the researchers? Anna nodded slowly. The first ones, the ones who didn't understand what they were dealing with. She pointed her light down the hallway. But that's not what we're here for. We need to find the main lab. We kept walking, trying not to look too closely at the walls, but it was hard to ignore what we were seeing. More transformed limbs, faces half turned to bark, frozen in expressions that made my stomach turn. The forest hadn't just taken them, it had changed them. The hallway opened into a large room filled with old equipment. Papers were scattered everywhere, yellow with age but somehow not rotted despite the damp. And there, in the center of it all, was a large glass tank filled with what looked like thick, dark sap. This is where they did it, Anna said. Where they tried to store memories in the trees. She walked over to a desk and picked up an old folder. They thought they could use the forest's natural root network like a computer, storing information in the trees themselves. I picked up one of the papers from the floor. It was a research note dated 1971. Subject shows remarkable integration with plant matter. Cellular transformation proceeding faster than expected. Memory transfer successful, but unable to control. Direction of flow. Subject reports experiencing memories that are not their own. My hands started shaking. Sarah found this, didn't she? This is what she was studying. Before Anna could answer, something changed in the room. The air got heavier, and the roots in the walls started moving. Not like before, this was different. They were reaching for us. Robert, Anna said urgently, you need to look at this. She was holding up an old photograph. It showed Sarah, but not from a year ago. This photo was dated 2 weeks ago. That's impossible, I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I felt something strange happening. The room seemed to shift, like I was looking at it through water, and then I heard it, Sarah's voice, but not coming from anywhere in particular. It seemed to be coming from the roots themselves. The memories aren't stored in the trees, her voice said. They're stored in us, in people, the forest. It just helps us remember. Suddenly, my head was full of images that weren't mine. I saw the forest as it was 50 years ago, saw the researchers working in this room. I saw Sarah walking these same halls just weeks ago. The memories flooded in like water, making me dizzy. It's starting, Anna said, grabbing my arm. The forest is trying to connect with you, just like it did with Sarah. I looked down at my hands and almost screamed. My veins were turning green, visible through my skin like little roots. The change was spreading up my arms, and I could feel it, feel the forest's thoughts mixing with my own. Don't fight it, Anna said, her voice seeming to come from very far away. This is how we find her. This is how we learn the truth. The transformation wasn't painful, but it felt strange, like my blood was turning to sap, like my thoughts were spreading out through the root network that surrounded us. Through the confusion, one thought stayed clear. Sarah had been here. She had gone through this same thing. And somewhere in the forest's memory, she was still here. The roots were all around us now, moving like living things. But they weren't. Attacking. They were showing us something. Images formed in the dark sap of the tank. Sarah in this room, her hands already half transformed, writing in her journal. She was smiling. She wasn't taken, I realized, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. She went willingly. She wanted to become part of it. Anna nodded, holding up her charms as the roots grew closer. The forest doesn't just take, Robert. It trades. A memory for a memory, a life for a life. The transformation was up to my shoulders now. I could feel the forest's consciousness pressing against my mind, full of memories that stretched back centuries. And somewhere in that vast network of thoughts and memories, Sarah was waiting. I had a choice to make. The roots reached for me like welcoming hands, and this time, I didn't back away. Time stopped making sense after that. Or maybe it was just moving differently now that the forest was in my blood. My skin had turned the color of young bark, and I could feel every root and branch around us like they were my own fingers and toes. Stay with me, Robert. Anna's voice cut through the flood of memories in my head. Don't let yourself get lost. Lost. That was a funny word now. I could feel everything. Every tree, every leaf, every memory stored in the roots beneath our feet. Somewhere in all of this was Sarah. I just had to find her. Focus, Anna said, touching my shoulder with one of her wooden charms. What do you see? The memories came like pictures flipping through my mind. A young girl climbing a tree in 1932, her laughter stored in the rings of an old oak. A deer running from hunters in 1954. Its fear caught in the sap of a pine. Scientists in white coats, measuring roots in 1971, their excitement turning to horror as the forest reached back. And Sarah walking these same halls 2 weeks ago, her hands already green with transformation, smiling as she wrote in her journal. She knew, I said, my voice sounding rough like bark scraping bark. She knew what the forest was doing. She wanted to join it. The roots around us pulsed faster, and suddenly I could see through Sarah's eyes. She was standing in this same room, but it was different then, cleaner. She was looking at the old research papers, understanding something that had escaped everyone else. The government got it wrong, I said, the memory flowing through me like sap. They thought they could force the forest to store memories, like saving files on a computer. But the forest already had its own memories. It just needed people to help it remember. Anna nodded. The old stories say the forest has been here since the beginning. It remembers everything that's ever happened. But memories need minds to live in. They need people. The transformation had reached my chest now. I could feel my heart beating. In time with the pulse of the roots, each beat brought new memories, new understanding. The researchers, I said, seeing it all now, they tried to take memories from the forest, but you can't just take, you have to give something back. That's why I looked at the half-transformed bodies in the walls, understanding at last. The forest defended itself, but Sarah was different, Anna said softly. She offered herself willingly, a fair trade. I pushed deeper into the forest's memory, searching. There, a flash of Sarah's face, her eyes bright with discovery. She was writing something. I focused harder, trying to see the words. The forest isn't a thing. It's a place where memories live. And it's lonely, so lonely. It needs people to share its memories with, to keep them alive. The researchers tried to steal them, but I understand. Now I can help it remember. I can help it be less alone. The memory shifted, and I saw Sarah standing in the stone circle above us. She was crying, but she was smiling too. Her hands were already half transformed, green veins glowing under her skin. She reached out to touch a tree, and a surge of emotion hit me so hard I staggered. Love, that's what I felt in Sarah's memory. Not fear, not horror, love. Love for the forest, for its ancient memories, for the truth she'd discovered. She's still here, I whispered. Not trapped, not taken. She's part of it now, part of everything. As if in response, the roots around us shifted, forming a tunnel leading deeper into the earth. And at the end of that tunnel, I saw a soft green light, pulsing like a heartbeat. There's more to see, Anna said. The forest wants to show us something. But Robert, she grabbed my arm, her eyes serious. If we go deeper, there's no going back. The transformation, it'll finish. I looked down at my hands, bark-colored and lined with glowing green veins. I could feel the forest's memories running through me like a river. Somewhere ahead, Sarah was waiting. Not as the person she had been, but as something new, something that was part human, part tree, part memory. The green light pulsed again, calling us forward. I'm ready, I said, and took my first step toward the truth. The green light led us down into the heart of the forest's memory. The tunnel walls weren't metal anymore. They were made of living wooden roots, pulsing with the same light that ran through my veins now. Close your eyes, Anna whispered. Let the forest show you. I did, and suddenly I wasn't in the tunnel anymore. I was everywhere at once. Every tree, every root, every leaf in the forest was connected, sharing memories like they were passing notes in class. And there, in the middle of it all, was Sarah. She wasn't exactly human anymore, but she wasn't exactly a tree either. She was both. Her body had become like living wood, her hair like delicate leaves, her eyes glowing with that same green light. But her smile, that was still Sarah. You found me, Her voice came through the roots, through the very air itself. "Sarah!" I tried to speak, but my voice cracked. The transformation was almost complete now. I could feel bark forming over my skin, could feel my thoughts spreading out through the root network. "Why?" She reached out with a hand that was half branches, touching my face. Through her touch, I felt everything she had discovered. The forest was ancient, older than anything humans had built. It had watched the first people walk beneath its branches, had seen civilizations rise and fall, had kept every memory safe. But memories needed minds to live in. The forest could hold them, but it needed people to understand them, to keep them alive. The researchers thought they could take the memories by force, Sarah's voice explained. But the forest doesn't work that way. It needs willing partners, people who choose to become part of it. "Like you did," I said, understanding at last. She nodded, leaves rustling softly. "I found their research, but I saw what they couldn't. The forest wasn't a thing to be used. It was alive, aware, lonely. It needed people to share its memories with, to help it remember everything it had seen." The transformation was reaching my neck now. I could feel my thoughts changing, expanding. Every tree in the forest was becoming part of me, just as I was becoming part of them. Anna stood nearby, her tribal charms glowing. "Your people knew," I said to her. "That's why you had the ceremonies." "We did," she nodded, "but we only joined with the forest for short times, during rituals. What Sarah discovered was a way to make it permanent, to truly become part of the forest's memory." Sarah's branch fingers touched my hand. "You don't have to stay," she said softly. "You can still go back, if you want." But I could feel what she felt now, the peace of it, the wonder, being part of something so vast, so ancient, helping the forest remember everything it had seen, everything it had been. The transformation reached my face. For a moment, I felt afraid. Then Sarah squeezed my hand, and through our connected roots I felt her love, not just for me, but for everything. The forest, its memories, its endless cycle of growth and change. "I'm staying," I said, and felt my last words form as both sound and memory, stored forever in the rings of ancient trees. They say the forest near Eagle's Ridge is different now. The locals talk about strange lights between the trees at night, about voices in the wind that sound almost human. They say if you stand very still and listen, you can hear the forest remembering. Anna still comes to the stone circle, performing the old ceremonies. Sometimes she brings others who are ready to learn the forest's truth. The government facility stays hidden, guarded by roots and memories, a reminder of what happens when you try to take what must be freely given. And deep in the woods, where the trees grow oldest and the shadows move like living things, there's a place where two trees have grown together, their branches intertwined. Their bark shows patterns that look almost like faces, a man and a woman smiling at some private joke. The forest remembers everything now, and so do we. If you walk in these woods and feel something watching you, don't be afraid. It's just the forest, sharing its memories. And if you listen carefully, if you're very still and very quiet, you might hear what it's trying to tell you. After. Every forest needs new stories to remember, and there's always room for one more memory in the trees. The day I found out that skin could move on its own was the day everything changed. I remember it clearly. It was a hot July morning in 1992, and I was digging in the New Mexico desert, my hands covered in dirt and sweat dripping down my face. My name is Dr. Thomas Rivers, and I'm an anthropologist, or at least I was. Now I'm not sure what I am anymore. I'd come to these ancient Pueblo ruins looking for answers about what happened to Sarah, my research partner and the love of my life. She'd disappeared here 6 months ago while studying Native American rituals. The police gave up searching after 3 weeks. They said people get lost in the desert all the time. But I knew better. I'd seen the strange marks on the ground where they found her notebook. I'd heard her last voicemail, her voice shaking as she talked about shadows that moved wrong and footprints that changed shape. The ruins spread out before me like broken teeth sticking up from the sand. Most tourists only see the parts above ground, the crumbling walls and old fire pits. But I'd found something else, something that wasn't on any map. It started with a hollow sound under my feet while I was walking near the eastern wall. When I brushed away the sand, I found a wooden handle buried in the stone. It took all my strength to pull it open, revealing a dark hole leading straight down into the earth. The air that came up smelled old, really old, like dust and dried herbs and something else I couldn't quite place. I should have been excited. This was the kind of discovery archaeologists dream about, but something felt wrong. The sand around the entrance moved strangely, like it was breathing. And when I shone my flashlight down into the darkness, the beam seemed to bend just a little, as if the light itself was trying to avoid something. But I had to know. For Sarah. The ladder leading down was made of ancient wood, but it held my weight. Each step took me deeper underground, the temperature dropping with every foot. The tunnel at the bottom stretched out in two directions, its walls covered in paintings I'd never seen in any textbook. They showed people changing, their skin peeling off like snake scales, their bodies twisting into impossible shapes. That's when I heard it, a sound like paper being slowly torn, coming from somewhere in the darkness ahead. I swept my flashlight around, and the beam caught something moving on the wall. Not a shadow, not an animal. It was the wall itself. The stone rippled like water, and for a split second I saw a face push out from it, a face I recognized. "Sarah?" I whispered. The face disappeared, melting back into the stone. But now I could see other things in the tunnel. Clay pots arranged in circles, strange symbols carved into the floor. And in the center of it all, a book. Not an ancient text like you'd expect, but a modern notebook. Sarah's notebook. The one the police never found. My hands shook as I picked it up. Inside, her neat handwriting filled page after page, but the words didn't make sense. She wrote about skin that could be taken off like clothing, about time moving backwards, about something ancient waking up under the desert. The last entry was dated the day she disappeared. "Tom, if you find this, don't look for me. What's happening? Here isn't just folklore or superstition. The skinwalkers are real, but they're not what the stories say. They're so much worse. The changes have already started in me. I can feel my skin getting loose. Last night I watched my hand dissolve into sand and back again. There's something out there in the desert, something old, and it's been waiting for us, for all of us. The rituals weren't meant to keep it out. They were meant to keep it in. And now it's waking up." That's when the walls started breathing. I ran my flashlight across the tunnel again, and this time I saw them, hundreds of handprints pressed into the stone, except they weren't pressed in. They were pressing out, like hands trying to break. Through from the other side. And they were moving. A wind that shouldn't exist underground began to blow, carrying with it whispers in a language I didn't understand. The sand under my feet shifted, forming patterns that looked almost like words, and then I felt it, a tickling sensation on my arm. When I looked down, I saw my skin ripple just once, like the surface of a pond after you throw a stone. I should have run. Any sane person would have run. But all I could think about was Sarah and how she must have stood in this exact spot, seeing these exact things. In that moment, I made a choice that would change everything. I opened her notebook and started to read. I didn't know it then, but that was the last normal moment of my life. The last time I could be sure that my skin was truly my own, that time moved in only one direction, that reality was solid and unchangeable. Because what I found in those underground chambers wasn't just a discovery. It was an awakening. And it wasn't just watching me, it was waiting for me. I spent hours reading Sarah's notebook in that underground chamber, my flashlight growing dimmer by the minute. My back ached from sitting on the cold ground, but I couldn't. "Stop reading," That's when I heard footsteps above. You shouldn't be down there. The voice was calm but firm, echoing down the shaft. I pointed my flashlight up and saw a woman's face peering down at me. She had long, grey-streaked black hair and deep wrinkles around her eyes that spoke of both wisdom and worry. "Come up," she said. "It's not safe after sunset." I didn't argue. Something about her voice told me she knew more than I did. When I climbed out, the sun was already setting, painting the desert in shades of orange and purple. The woman introduced herself as Maria Runningwolf and said she'd been watching me since morning. "You're looking for the woman who disappeared," she said. It wasn't a question. I knew her. Sarah came to me before it happened. My heart skipped a beat. "You knew Sarah? Please, I need to know what happened to her." Maria gestured for me to follow her. We walked to a small house about half a mile from the ruins. It was a simple place with wind chimes made of bones hanging from the porch. Inside, she made tea while I sat at her kitchen table, Sarah's notebook clutched in my hands. "First," she said, placing a cup in front of me, "show me your arms." I rolled up my sleeves, confused. Maria leaned in close, examining my skin. She touched a spot on my forearm where, earlier, I'd seen that ripple. "It's already starting," she whispered, "just like with her." "What's starting?" I asked, but I felt a chill despite the warm evening. Maria sat down and wrapped her hands around her own teacup. "Our people have stories," she began, "about those who can change their skin. Most think they're just stories to scare children. They're not, but the truth is worse than the stories." She told me about the ancient ones who lived in these lands, how they discovered something sleeping deep in the earth, something that could change the very nature of reality. They built the underground chambers to contain it, created rituals to keep it sleeping. But they made a mistake, Maria said. They thought they could control it, use small pieces of its power. That's how the first skinwalkers were born, people who could shed their skin, take new forms. But the power had a price. She got up and brought back a small wooden box. Inside was what looked like sand, but when she poured some into her palm, it moved on its own, forming shapes like tiny letters. "The thing underground, it doesn't just change bodies," she explained. "It changes everything, time, space, reality itself. The skinwalkers weren't transforming themselves, they were being transformed, being unmade." I thought about the face I'd seen in the wall. "Sarah, is she..." "She came to me 2 weeks before she disappeared," Maria said softly. Her skin was already starting to shift. I tried to help her with protective rituals, but she'd read too much, learned too much. The change had already begun. "Can it be stopped?" I asked, thinking about the ripple I'd seen on my own arm. Maria was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes, if caught early enough. I have artifacts, ancient things that can help hold reality together. But first, you need to understand what we're dealing with." She opened Sarah's notebook to a page I hadn't reached yet. The handwriting was shaky, desperate. "The sand is alive. When I sleep, I can hear it whispering. My dreams show me impossible things. Cities built from living flesh, skies that rain blood, people turning inside out. But they're not dreams. They're memories, not mine. It's memories, and it's getting stronger." "The ruins," Maria explained. "They're not just ruins. They're a door. And Sarah, she didn't just disappear. She became part of it, part of the change." I looked down at my arm again, remembering the strange ripple. "What happens now?" Maria stood up and walked to a shelf filled with small pouches and clay jars. "Now," she said, "we try to save you. And if we can't..." She turned back to me, her face grave. "We try to make sure that thing stays underground where it belongs." She handed me a small leather pouch on a cord. "Wear this. Don't take it off. Tomorrow we begin the binding rituals. But tonight," she looked out her window at the now dark desert, "tonight We pray your skin stays where it belongs. I touched the pouch, feeling something shift inside it like sand or small bones. Outside, the wind picked up, making the bone chimes clatter. And somewhere, far off in the desert, I heard something that might have been a coyote howling, or might have been something else entirely. Maria saw me looking outside and shook her head. "Don't," she said. "Don't look into the dark too long. These nights, the dark looks back. And sometimes it wears familiar faces." I clutched the pouch tighter and tried not to think about Sarah's face in the wall. Tried not to think about how my skin felt just a little looser than it should. Tried not to think about the sand outside, moving in patterns that looked almost like words, almost like names. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I felt something ancient stirring, watching through my own eyes, waiting to wake up completely. Woke up on Maria's couch just before sunrise, my neck stiff from sleeping awkwardly. For a moment, everything felt normal. Then I tried to scratch my arm. My finger went right through the skin. I didn't feel pain. That was the strangest part. My finger just sank in, like my arm was made of soft clay. I yanked it back out and stared at my skin, watching it ripple and settle like the surface of a pond. "Don't panic," Maria's voice came from the kitchen. "Fear makes it worse." She walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee, looking like she hadn't slept at all. "Drink this," she said, handing me one. "I added some herbs that should help keep you together." The coffee tasted bitter and earthy. While I drank, Maria checked the leather pouch around my neck. "Still holding," she muttered, "but we need to work fast." She led me outside. The desert morning was cool and quiet, too quiet. No birds singing, no insects buzzing. Even the wind seemed to be holding its breath. "Your skin," Maria explained. As we walked toward the ruins, it's becoming loose. The thing underground, it's pulling at you, trying to unmake you. "Like it unmade Sarah?" I asked. Maria stopped walking. "Look at the sand," she said instead of answering. I looked down. The sand around our feet was moving, forming patterns like ripples in water. But these ripples were following us, like fingerprints being pressed up from below. "It's watching," Maria said quietly. "Always watching. Through the sand, through the stones, through our own eyes sometimes." We reached the ruins just as the sun cleared the horizon. Maria took out a small bag of red powder and started drawing circles around, us with it. That's when I saw my hand start to melt. It happened slowly at first. My fingers got longer, like wax dripping down. I tried to scream, but Maria clamped her hand over my mouth. "Don't," she whispered. "Sound attracts it. Watch your hand. Focus. Remember its shape. Remember who you are." I stared at my melting fingers, my heart pounding. They were stretching, reaching toward the ground like pale streams of water. But as I watched, focusing hard on what they should look like, they began to pull back together. "Good," Maria said. "The first change is always the hardest. Your body wants to stay whole. You just have to remind it how." But something felt different. Now, my skin felt like a coat that was slightly too big, like I could shrug out of it if I wanted to. The thought made me sick. "The circles will help," Maria said, finishing her pattern. "But we need more. We need to perform the binding ritual." Before, she stopped talking suddenly, her eyes going wide. I followed her gaze to the ground between us. The sand was spelling out words. "Hello, Thomas," it wrote itself. Then, "Sarah says hello too." My stomach turned to ice. The letters kept forming, the sand moving like it was being stirred by invisible fingers. "She's part of us now, just like you will be," Maria started chanting, throwing more red powder on the ground. The sand stopped moving, but I could feel something watching us, something huge and ancient and patient. "Inside," Maria said, her voice shaking slightly. "We need to get inside. Now." But as we turned to go, I caught movement from the corner of my eye. There was someone standing by the ruins, a figure made of rippling darkness. It wore Sarah's face, but wrong, like a mask that didn't quite fit. "Tom," it called in Sarah's voice. "Tom, I've missed you." "Don't look." Maria grabbed my arm. "Don't listen. That's not her, not anymore." We ran back to her house. Behind us, I heard Sarah's voice calling my name, getting more distorted with each call until it didn't sound human at all. Inside, Maria locked the doors and windows. She handed me a mirror. "Look at your face," she said. "You need to see." I looked. My face was still my face, but parts of it were moving, sliding, like pieces of a puzzle trying to rearrange themselves. "The changes are happening faster than I thought," Maria said, pulling books and jars from her shelves. "We need to start the binding ritual now, before you lose too much of yourself." "And if we wait too long?" I asked, watching my reflection ripple. Maria paused in her preparations. "Then you'll join Sarah," she said softly. "You'll become part of it, part of the thing underground. And it will use your face, your voice, to call others, to wake them up, to change them too." Outside, the wind picked up, making the bone chimes clatter, and in that sound I thought I could hear whispers, voices. Sarah's voice, my voice, and other voices I didn't recognize, all calling out in languages that had never been meant for human tongues. I looked down at my hands. They were still hands mostly, but under the skin I could see things moving, changing, waiting to come out. And somewhere deep underground, something ancient was stirring, reaching up through sand and stone, trying to pull reality apart at the seams. It had gotten Sarah. Now, it was coming for me, and it was so patient. Maria's living room kept changing. One minute it was normal, worn couch, wooden shelves, bone chimes at the window. The next minute, everything would shift, like someone was erasing and redrawing the world around us. I saw the same moment repeat 5 times. Maria dropping a clay jar, the jar breaking, her picking up the pieces. Each time it happened slightly differently. Sometimes the jar broke into 3 pieces, sometimes into 20. Once it broke upward, the pieces floating to the ceiling like there was no gravity. "Time's coming undone," Maria said, her voice echoing strangely. "It's breaking through." I tried to stand up, but my legs weren't where they should be. When I looked down, they were 3 feet to the left of my body, still moving like they were attached. "Focus," Maria grabbed my shoulders. "Remember what you look like. Remember who you are." But who was I? I could remember being Dr. Thomas Rivers, remember studying ancient cultures, remember loving Sarah. But I could also remember being sand, being stone, being the wind that had blown through this desert for millions of years. "The binding ritual," I managed to say. "We need to—" "Yes," Maria said. She started laying out objects in a circle, bones, crystals, small clay pots filled with dark liquid. "But it's fighting us." Outside, the desert was waking up. I could see it through the windows, waves of sand rising and falling like an ocean. The ruins had changed too. The broken walls were growing, twisting into impossible shapes. Some looked like hands reaching for the sky, others like faces frozen in screams. Then I saw Sarah again, not just one Sarah, but dozens of her, walking through the waves of sand. Each one was slightly different. Some had too many arms, others had faces. On their hands, one was walking backward, but her head was facing forward. "Tom!" they all called at once. "Come join us, it's wonderful here. We're everything now, everyone." I felt my skin start to peel away, trying to reach toward her voices. Maria grabbed my arm and pressed the leather pouch hard against it. "That's not Sarah," she said firmly. "Not anymore. The thing underground is using her memories, her face. It wants you to give in." The desert outside rippled again, and suddenly it was night, then day, then night again. The sun and moon chased each other across the sky like they were running. A race. My memories started playing backward. I saw myself driving to the ruins, then back at my university office, then in grad school, then as a child. But mixed in were other memories. Memories of being a coyote running through the desert, of being a boulder watching centuries pass, of being something vast and ancient that slept in the dark. "Maria," I gasped, feeling my ribs trying to slide out from under my skin. I can't hold on." She finished the circle and grabbed both my hands. "Listen to my voice. Feel your hands, these hands, human hands. Remember your name." "Thomas Rivers," I said, but even as I said it, I felt other names trying to speak themselves through my mouth. Old names, names in languages that burned the air when spoken. The walls of the house began to breathe. The bone chimes sang without wind. Outside, the Sarahs were getting closer, their bodies melting together into something huge and shapeless. "The ritual," Maria said, her voice steady despite everything. "We have to do it now." She started chanting in a language I didn't know. The objects in the circle began to glow, but something was wrong. The light they gave off bent in impossible ways, casting shadows that moved on their own. I looked down at my hands again. My skin was peeling back like pages in a book, showing other skins underneath. Scales, fur, stone, things I had no words for. Each layer held different memories, different lives. "Tom," Maria's voice cut through the chaos. "Look at me. Focus." On me, I tried, but behind her I could see through the wall of her house, could see down into the earth, could see the thing that was waking up. It was vast, ancient, made of darkness and sand and stolen skins, and it was looking back at me. "I have been waiting," it said, "not in words, but in memories, in pieces, in dreams. Now it is time to be whole." The desert outside roared like an ocean. The house began to fold in on itself like paper. Maria's chanting grew louder, the circle of objects blazing brighter, and in the middle of it all, I felt myself coming apart. Not just my skin now, but everything I was. My memories scattered like sand in the wind. My thoughts split and multiplied like reflections in broken glass. Part of me was still Thomas Rivers, holding desperately to Maria's hands. Part of me was sand, flowing and shifting with the desert. Part of me was Sarah, all the Sarahs, walking with too many limbs through the twisted landscape. And part of me was something else, something that had slept for so long, dreaming of shapes and changes. "Remember who you are," Maria shouted over the roar of the desert. "Remember your name." But I had so many names now, and they were all calling out at once. The world had gone wrong. The house wasn't a house anymore. Its walls had turned to sand and bone, flowing like water. Maria's circle of ritual objects floated in the air, spinning like planets around a dark sun. I couldn't feel my body anymore. Or maybe I had too many bodies. I was everywhere and nowhere at once. "Thomas Rivers." Maria's voice cut through the chaos. She was still holding my hands, or what used to be my hands. "Say your name." "Thomas." I tried, but other voices came out of my mouth. Sarah's voice, coyote voices, voices made of wind and stone. The thing underground was almost awake. Now, I could feel it pulling at everything, at time, at space, at reality itself. The desert outside had become an ocean of moving sand, with waves that broke upward into the sky. "The ritual," Maria said. "We have one chance, but you have to choose." "Choose what?" I asked with too many mouths. "To be human," she said. "To be one thing, one person. You have to want it more than anything." But did I? Part of me was soaring through impossible skies. Part of me was running through ancient memories. Part of me was with Sarah, all the Sarahs, dancing through endless deserts of time. Then I saw my reflection in Maria's eyes. My face wasn't a face anymore. It was a swirling mass of shapes and forms, each one trying to be something different. And behind it all, I saw the thing from underground looking out through what used to be my eyes. That's when I understood what Sarah had meant in her last notes. The skinwalkers weren't people who could change shapes. They were people who had lost their shape entirely, lost themselves, become part of something bigger and older and hungrier than anything human. I forced the word out through a mouth that kept trying to change. I choose. The thing underground reached up with fingers made of memory and darkness. Yes, it whispered in a voice like sliding sand. Choose us. Be everything. Sarah's face appeared in the swirling walls. Not the twisted versions outside, but Sarah as I remembered her. She smiled sadly. Tom, she said softly, I'm sorry. I wasn't strong enough to choose. The ritual objects in Maria's circle burst into impossible light. The ground cracked open beneath us, and I felt the ancient thing rising, trying to pull everything into itself. Choose now, Maria shouted. I looked at Sarah's face one last time. Then I closed all my eyes, all the dozens of eyes I had become, and thought about who I was, who I wanted to be. I am Thomas Rivers, I said. The thing underground screamed with 1,000 voices. I am Thomas Rivers, I said again, feeling parts of myself being torn away. Memories of being sand, of being stone, of being ancient and endless. They ripped free like shedding skin. I am Thomas Rivers. Maria's ritual circle exploded with light that cut through everything, through flesh and bone, through time and space, through reality itself. I felt the thing underground being pushed back, felt its grip on the world weaken, but it wasn't enough. It needs a door, Maria shouted over, the sound of reality tearing, a way back in. I understood then. It needed a sacrifice, someone to take Sarah's place, someone to keep it sleeping. I looked at Maria. She nodded slowly. I am Thomas Rivers, I said one last time. Then, and I choose to remember. I let go of my human shape, let go of everything except my memories of being Thomas Rivers. As my body dissolved into sand and light, I pushed all my humanity, all myself, into remembering. Remembering who I was, who Sarah was, what it meant to be human. The thing underground howled as I flowed into its prison. But this time, I wasn't letting it take my memories. This time, I was giving it something else. The memory of being one thing, one person. The memory of choosing. The last thing I saw was Maria completing the ritual, sealing the door with symbols made of starlight and sand. The last thing I heard was Sarah's voice, her real voice, whispering, "Thank you." Then everything went dark, but in the darkness I remembered. I remembered being Thomas Rivers, and somewhere in the desert, in the endless sand and ancient stone, I remember still. Maria Running Wolf still lives in her small house by the ruins. People say she's gotten older, but it's hard to tell. The desert has a way of preserving things. The tourists still come to see the ancient Pueblo walls. They take pictures, buy postcards, leave before sunset. They don't notice how the sand sometimes moves in strange patterns. Don't see the faces that appear in the stone when the light hits it just right. Sometimes, on quiet nights when the moon is full, Maria sits on her porch and listens to the bone chimes. And sometimes, carried on the desert wind, she hears whispers. A man and a woman talking softly about memories and choices and what it means to stay human. The underground chambers are sealed now. Maria made sure of that. But the desert remembers, the sand remembers, and somewhere deep below, something ancient sleeps and dreams of changing shapes. But its dreams are different now, quieter, more human, because now it dreams of being Thomas Rivers, who chose to remember, of being Sarah, who learned too late what it meant to choose. It dreams of being one thing instead of everything. Occasionally, hikers report seeing strange things in the desert. A woman walking through the dunes, her footprints changing shape. A man made of sand and memory standing watch by the ruins. But by the time anyone comes to look, there's nothing there but wind and stone. Maria knows the truth. She keeps Sarah's notebook locked away, along with the ritual objects that glow with impossible light. Sometimes she opens the notebook and reads the last entry. Not Sarah's desperate warnings, but a new message that appeared after that final night, written in sand that somehow stayed on the page. We remember, we choose, we remain. The skinwalkers are still out there, the old stories say, still waiting in the desert nights. But now they're different. Now they remember what it means to be human. Now they choose. And in the desert, in the endless sand and ancient stone, something that used to be Thomas Rivers keeps its watch, keeps its memories, keeps its choice, keeps us all human, even in our darkest dreams.